Like Joe Montana in the corner, D. Clark. Garrison Hurst, stiff farm going 99. Don't get it twisted, one and all with prime time. John Taylor, Jerry Rice down the side.
This is the 49er Faithful UK live show. And the observant amongst you will realise I am not Paul Hope. Sorry for the disappointment. Please stay tuned. Paul will be with us as soon as he can. Slight delay. But I am joined by Lee. Good evening, Lee. And I'm also joined by Fraser. Good evening, Fraser.
Good evening, Fraser. Good evening. I think the eagle-eyed might have also noticed that I played the wrong intro there.
Yeah.
And that's because Paul dropped us in at the very last moment. And I don't know what I'm doing.
I'm shocked that you've omitted that. But,
I know.
There we go. We see. Paul likes it. He likes it when all goes to falls apart when he's not here. Fraser, welcome to the show. Can you tell us a little bit about the great life choice that you made in picking the 49ers? Is there a story behind that? And how long have you been a faithful?
Yeah, well, I guess I didn't have much of a choice. I shared a bedroom with my older brother, who got into the NFL in '82 when Channel 4 started, like a lot of folk did. I was only about 5 or 6, but really didn't have a choice. I guess we had a bit of a sliding doors moment because the first game he watched was the Niners against the Browns, and he decided he was going to follow the team that won. So it was a close run thing, but the Niners came through, and thankfully, it's been tough for a few years. It could have been a whole lot worse. Absolutely.
Dodged the bullet there.
Yeah, followed them ever since. We made a pact back in the day that the Niners would get to the Super Bowl one day and we would be there and we'd see them win the Lombardi. And I think we were about 8 minutes and an Eric Fisher holding penalty away from realising our dream. But we had a good time. We've been a number of games, not so many in recent years. Family and things have come along. Managed to get my 9-year-old engrossed in it as well. So
good work.
His name is Brodie, and my brother insists that was after the 49ers legend John Brodie. I'm not sure my wife agrees with that, but and got into this group, I guess, probably during lockdown, like a lot of folk. Been to a couple of the meetups, one in Glasgow. I think it was at one in Newcastle last year, Lee, and you might be able to confirm. I don't have much memory of it, but that's probably a bad thing.
The Chiefs meetup,
Yeah, that was a bit messy, but a good one nonetheless from the bits I remember. So yeah, I guess that's me. I actually worked for NFL Europe for 6 years as well, so I had the chance to get involved with the Claymores and did a couple of exchanges to NFL teams as well. So as a kind of young 21-year-old, that was pretty cool. But Niners for me, and has always been that way.
So interesting that you say that you worked for NFL Europe. And you had a lot to do with the Claymores. So one of our admin, Jessica, her father, he now works for NFL Europe, and he had a lot to do with the Claymores. Unfortunately, I can't remember what you call them, but I'll have to find out. So you may know them.
I don't know them. Yeah. Still don't. And there's not many folk left now because that was, I guess, 2006. They pulled the shutters down on the Claymores, so that wasn't yesterday. But amazing time, absolutely amazing time, and great actually to see that European League, the semi-pro league, doing so well now. I think the crowd numbers out there are just phenomenal, considering. So yeah, got to live in hope that will come back to the UK.
Yeah. So
good evening, Martin.
Yeah, good evening, Martin. You've set us a task, Fraser, and I didn't bother reading the rules as normal. I mean, Gareth is used to this. I don't follow rules. Gareth tries to get me to stick to a certain topic, and I just go off on one, and I tend to get this mixed up all the time. But I can do this on the fly. I'm certain I can do this on the fly. I think there's only 1 or 2 positions I may need to tweak a little bit. Because when I went through it, I was looking at the players that I had available at each position, and I was thinking about what they were like. They played for us between those 25 years, but I was thinking what they were playing like at their prime.
I should leap in here and actually introduce what you are talking about in case anyone has missed it. Fraser has kicked off a all year team for the first 25 years of this millennium, this century. So the best Niners players from 2000 to 2025, so current. Nice little bit of off-season. There's certainly a lot worse things to be talking about this time of year from the professional content creators out there. It is that silly season, but this I thought was particularly good. Like some others, I have a strange. I got into the NFL in the 80s, but then drifted away from it when it became a lot more difficult to follow unless you were prepared to pay a lot of money for Sky and weren't interested in watching the Premier League. So there is a big gap in my Niners knowledge between sort of very late 90s and sort of about 2012. So I'm fascinated for the conversation you two guys are going to have. And I think there is going to be some recency bias, certainly from me. Go on, Lee.
To be honest, Gareth, the early 90s, after we got rid of Steve Mariucci, you're probably better off not remembering those years, if I'm honest.
Because I don't feel that I missed much.
The Dennis Erickson years were pretty poor. Nolan wasn't great, but they improved a little bit. Singletree was just a pantomime. It wasn't until Harbaugh came in 2010 that it started to get interesting again. So we did have about, I think Mariucci got the bullet in 2002.
Yeah,
is that about right, Fraser? 2002. So we had about 8 years, which was just absolute dross. But that didn't mean the players were. Because we did have some good players during those years.
Always do.
It's just, it's just that we couldn't buy a win. Honestly, it was that bad. And obviously then we got to the mid-teens and we went through a similar phase for a couple of seasons with our mate Chip Kelly and Jim Tomsula. Those 2 years were kind of...
And I will not hear a thing about
years.
Jim Tomsula, ex-Claymore's coach, and nicer guy you'll never meet. So it absolutely broke my heart to see what happened to him. But,
he was just a dreadful head coach. He was fantastic as a coach, but not as a head coach. But it's a shame that. So do you want to kind of explain the rules a little bit, Fraser? Because we had a little chat before we went live, and you... Basically, I gave away one of the positions, one of the players I had in a position, and you kind of said, well, if you'd followed the rules, you probably weren't going to pick him. So do you want to explain the rules?
So that, I guess there's no hard fast rules. This is all about, we've got 40 days away between the off-season programme and training camp, so it's about just having a bit of banter and finding out what's going on. The rules I thought of was, if you look at the Pro Bowl roster size, there's 6 receivers and all that. It makes it too easy. So try and narrow it down. So the AP All Pro roster is quite a good one to use as your kind of starting point. They have 21 personnel on offense, so only one running back, fullback, 3 receivers. And then on defense, they have 4-3, and they also allow you to add in an extra slot corner as well. So that's it. I take the view that it's the player's contribution during those 25 years. So I think there's 1 or 2 all-time greats that into the early years. But I think, again, that's part of the debate, isn't it? About whether that one season is enough to merit a place on this. So the more I kind of go into, I can't take credit for it. It's stolen from another podcast, but. When I started thinking through it and they started mentioning some names from the early 2000s, you're like, God, remember that guy? So it's an interesting one.
So can you remember which podcast it was?
It was the Locked On 49ers. So
Locked On 49ers, that's right. Yeah. So we give them credit for this.
Available.
Yeah. So what we'd normally do is give credit to whoever we're ripping off. But to be honest, I mean, on social media, I think everybody's taken up this challenge of trying to build their roster from the last 25 years, which is good. I think based off the conversations in the podcasting group, so myself, Gareth, Nadji and Paul, I think we're all a little bit concerned that our teams might be too similar to a certain let's call him a hack. Yes, our mate Kent. So we all are a little bit concerned about that. But it's going to be interesting. And like I said before the show, I kind of wanted to do it in reverse order to start with the defense and work our way back over, because I think everybody would expect us to start with the offense. And one of the position groups that I thought was going to be really difficult was going to be on the defensive side of the ball. But as it turned out, I think using the logic I've used, mind you, I haven't said this, this was using the wrong formation, but using the logic I used, I was pretty comfortable with my picks there. So
let's go straight in.
Corner. Yeah, I was going to say, I'm going to hand safety. Are we not starting at safeties right at the very back? Go on then. Do you want to go first, Fraser?
Okay. So I think there was one standout for me, and then there was a bunch of really good guys. The standout for me, and I actually found some clips on YouTube, was Tony Parrish. Was just an absolute bulldozer, a real old school. It doesn't seem that long ago, but you look back in the sort of mid 2000s, the build of a safety in those days is probably like the build of a defensive lineman now. But he was just a wrecking ball, and he had like 22 interceptions in his time there. So I think he, for me, is comfortably ahead of that. Then I guess there's a whole bunch. I'm sure you guys will have a few there, but for me, because I couldn't select between about 3 or 4 guys, I went with Dante Hittner purely on the basis of that one hit in the game against the Saints against Pierre. What's his name? Pierre Thomas. Down the goal line where he just destroyed him. I think he got like fined and flagged constantly, but he was just a joy to watch, an absolute wrecking ball. So so it would be Parrish and Whitner for me. So, any
honourable mentions?
I guess there's a bunch of guys, because we've not done this on the Facebook page yet, but I think there's Eric Reid. I was always a big Eric Reid fan. I was sad when we let him go, and I don't think he kind of lived up to his kind of early stage of his career and the kind of latter stages. Who else have we got here? So you've thrown me, because even guys like Lance Shoulders and Zach Bronson, again, they're not names that kind of immediately come to mind, but when you look at the numbers, these guys were pretty dominant. Deshaun Goldson was another one. I mean, that Goldson and the Whitner combo was pretty phenomenal in the early 2010s. So I think they're probably the guys I would go with. I don't know if there's any others that you want to throw in.
So there's 2 players that you haven't mentioned. At least I don't think you mentioned them. So my 2 players at safety is actually Jimmy Ward, and there's that Najak and he's screaming, and Dashon Goldson. To me, those are my 2 favourite safeties from the last 25 years. Now, I'm going to make an honourable mention to Antoine Bethea, who was very much like Dante Whitner, only he didn't give away any penalties like Dante Whitner. He was a hard-hitting player. I think he played 3 seasons with us, and I liked the way he played because it was difficult to get past Bethea. It's just that we kind of got him towards the back end of his career. He'd already started other places before he came to us. But for me, Jimmy Ward and Dashon Goldson are my two safeties. But I do like Eric Reid as well. I thought he was decent, and I thought he got a little bit of a bad rap when the whole Cap thing kicked off, and he seemed to come out of it just as bad as what Cap did, and he was a decent player, to be fair. Hi, Paul. Good of you to join us.
Hello, Paul.
Hello, chaps. So I have been watching. Jasmine had hold of my phone whilst we were driving back, and I have to say, Lee, you didn't wing it very well.
I don't condone watching YouTube and driving.
So, I wasn't watching. I was listening. But to be fair, I didn't have hold of the phone. But Fraser, good to see you, buddy. Do appreciate the work you've done in the group. As you said, Gareth, it's been a quiet off-season for the 49ers. We haven't known what to do these last few weeks, so it's good to be back, chaps.
So have you done any homework on this, Paul?
I have. So you did say Eric Reid was one of mine, but Dante Whitner. Now, obviously, my journey started a little bit later than you chaps, but he was a favourite of mine, Whitner, so I had to put him in there. So my 2 were Eric Reid and Dante Whitner for this position.
Right.
I didn't do any homework, and I can't look past Jimmy Ward for obvious reasons.
Yeah.
I mean, to be fair, Lee, I know Fraser's mentioned Crocker and Peacock. Locked On 49ers is one of my go-to podcasts. And when we decided to record this week, I did plug back in because I've had a couple of weeks off and I have watched their show of what they've done like we were doing. The only problem with this, I think we thought, Fraser, that we were going to have all the results. So I was going to come on tonight, Lee, and say that this team's been selected by the UK faithful. We'd have all the results. And then I think Fraser messaged me yesterday and was like, there's about another 40 days worth of polls to go yet, Paul. So I thought, we'll just see what happens on Wednesday night, chaps.
Do you think safety is a position I think a lot of people are going to have a different opinion, because I don't know that we've had that fully, that legendary type player at that position over the last 25 years.
No, I think you're right there, and I think there might be a little bit recency bias as well. So I haven't followed how the polls are going. So safety is not going to go until next week, is it? So we don't know yet. It will be interesting to see how many people pick Hufanga.
So, like I said, for context for people watching, Lee did say off air, Fraser, that we weren't allowed to take part in the polls because it would make no sense of doing a show. So seeing them flash up on Facebook, we also owe David Betteridge a public apology. He doesn't do Facebook, Lee. So I hastily screenshot the polls, Fraser, and pepper bombed them in Discord. So Dave, you're going to have to reach out to DMs, buddy, if you want to know who the votes are, because I know you don't do Facebook, but it is a bit of fun and it has helped the off-season kind of go along nicely.
You know, I need to figure out if we can do something on the website so it's open to everyone and not just people who's got a Facebook account.
And you chaps make out that you don't prepare. I was going to start the show, Gareth, after we'd done our little introduction, and then I was going to say, where do you want to start? And I had a feeling Gowland wasn't going to start at quarterback. So all my notes were ready for the defence, because that would be too easy to start at quarterback.
Well, it would be. I mean, that's what I thought. It would be too easy to start at quarterback because that's where everybody's expecting you to go. And that's why I thought it'd be good going in reverse order. So we on to cornerbacks, defensive backs.
Corner, I think.
Well, of course, do remember you get two corners and a slot for this.
I've got them down. But this is, I think, one where I might need to make a bit of a change. So I'm going to let you go first again, Fraser, while I contemplate what I'm going to do about this corner.
One's potentially controversial. So a guy called Nate Clements, who we signed on a whopping great contract. I mean, even by today's standards, it would be big. It was like 8 years, $80 million. And I think one of these guys that didn't live up to the hype, but also as a contract of that size, you're expecting like an all-pro, future Hall of Famer. But I think when you look at his numbers and you compare it to some of the other guys, I think he's certainly statistically the strongest of the lot. And then the other one I really toyed with because there is a danger that we've had a bunch of players that have come from other teams that have gone on to other teams and they've had huge careers. And I thought, does Sherman fall into that category? Are you picking him because of his reputation and you look at him versus some other guys? But I think, what he meant to the team coming over, the loss to the Seahawks by bringing him across to the Niners, I just thought he was immense and was a difference maker at that point when we needed guys. So I think he's mine. Again, another guy from early 2000s that I think deserves a mention is Ahmad Plummer. Guy that for like the first 3 seasons from his rookie year on played at again like an all-pro level, and then last 2 seasons got absolutely hammered with injuries, and then was out of the league by his I think the 5th or 6th season. But he's certainly worthy of a mention. But yeah, for me it's Clements and Sherman. Interesting
your memories of Clements, because all I remember is that big contract and thinking, this guy's not worth that contract. If I'm being honest, that was my. I mean, we had another one not long after him either, who we gave a big contract to, Nnamdi Asamoah, and he was rubbish as well. And I just see the size of the contract, and if I don't see the value there, I don't really put any value on the player themselves. Did you pick a nickelback there, Fraser?
Yeah, so I haven't put him in a slot, but to be honest, I think the difficulty with that is like trying to find somebody that's played that position consistently. And I think it's only Kevon Williams is really the only guy that stands out to me. A lot of guys have fitted in there, and I think there's a lot of guys even on our current roster you think I'd quite happily see Lenore in that position. But in terms of kind of numbers and difference, again, was just part of that era where our run defence was just phenomenal, and it was a big part down to him.
So we're not a million miles away on the defensive backs there, because I've gone K1 Williams as the nickel back. I think he was excellent. One of the best nickel backs I've seen play. Cornerback, I've gone for Richard Sherman. It Tudors this one, but I think his first 2 seasons with us, I thought he was outstanding. I thought that last season he wasn't as good. He'd lost a step or two. He was getting a lot of penalties against him. But I still think the level he played at was far better than pretty much all of the cornerbacks we've had in the last 25 years. And the other one is Mooney Ward. And again, I just feel as though the quality we've had from him, the value we've had from him, has been excellent. Obviously, it dropped off this season, but then we found out why it dropped off this season. And yet he still made it back on the field soon after that and give 110%. So yeah, I've got Mooney Ward, Richard Sherman and K1 Williams. How about yourself, Paul?
Well, I'm the same as you two chaps. As Fraser said, Williams was the obvious choice. When you look back over the game tape and stuff, he was the glue guy in the secondary. Yeah. Richard Sherman, purely Fraser, because I hated him that much at the Seahawks. And when he broke our hearts on that run, and he blocked a load of Niners fans. I wasn't one of them, Lee, but I'm sure there was a few in our group that was blocked. The way he won us over so quickly, and the fact that even now he's still kind of wearing the red balls. You know, he could have gone back to the Seahawks. But I put Sherman in there. And just for a bit of difference, because I was torn with Ward, but I remember when I first started watching the Niners, Carlos Rogers had quietly some good years under Harbaugh.
He did.
I remember falling in love with that Niners team. So I thought, for the point of a discussion, when I made my notes, do my homework, as Gareth says, I went for Sherman, Rodgers, and K1 Williams. They were my 3 at this position.
Well, funnily enough, I was umming and ahhing whether or not to get rid of Sherman and actually put Carlos Rogers in there, based off the whole rule set. But like I said, because of those first 2 seasons with us, I thought Sherman deserved it, because he played at an elite level still. Whereas Carlos Rogers, he did have some good seasons for us, but you could never call any of them elite, especially because when you look around at some of the cornerbacks that were in the league at the time, he was nowhere near as good as them, even though he was one of the best corners on the team. Right? He was our best corner on the team, to be fair. So
I tried to stay away from recency bias as well, but you've mentioned linebackers.
Yeah,
and that's going to be hard to do with this position of choice.
Yeah. I'll be honest.
I'll just leap
when
in
I went
on
through this. Go on.
I'll just leaping on corner there. It's a position where we, again, a bit like safety, we haven't necessarily had that long term, someone who's come in for years. And we've had Sherman was great for a couple of years, as you said.
Yeah.
Ward was great for a couple of years. Remember, Jason Verrett had one amazing season.
He did,
and then was injured. And I think it's the recency bias. But Lenore is the guy that we've signed on the longest kind of contract, and seems to be we finally, after 10 years, got a cornerback who might as well stay with us and put in that 3 or 4 years of very top level play. And we just haven't had that. So I think, like safety, this is pick your favourite guy.
So Lenore could be in the conversation in 10 years' time, Gareth, and Verrett had a red flag because our friend Mr. Kent picked him. So automatically, I couldn't have someone that Mr. Kent picked.
Yeah. Funny enough, as soon as Gareth mentioned him, my mind was going back. I'm sure Kent picked him. I'm sure he did.
But he did have that one great season, and we thought we've snapped up this guy for next to nothing. It's going to be great, and of course, poor guy can't stay on the field. Anyway, linebackers. Right.
Do you mind if I cheat a little bit? I'm going to pick 2 different groups. No, you don't. You're not going to get a choice. I'm going to pick 2 different groups. So I'll start off with the official rules, which is a 4-3 defence. So my three linebackers, and I think they're an absolute no-brainer. Patrick Willis, Navarro Bowman, and Fred Warner. That's my three linebackers for the 4-3. However, I also had a 3-4 defence. I'm saying I also had. That's the only defence I had, a 3-4 defence, because my fourth linebacker was Alden Smith. Alden Smith, Fred Warner, Navarro Bowman, and Patrick Willis.
So if you're new to the show, everybody, this is what Lee Gowland does. So Fraser, you might have come on thinking you were the man in charge with all the rules. As Gareth Ellis knows better than most, this is what Gowland does. But there's a flag on the play, Lee.
Yeah, I saw it.
I don't know that there's a lot to argue with what you've just said, Lee. So defensive end next?
I just wanted to say before you move on, the holy trinity of linebacker dominance. As soon as this poll was put up, Fraser, I thought I would be shocked if that wasn't 100% of the options. Everybody just picks those three.
Yeah.
Yeah. Can't argue
Okay.
those three.
Defensive ends. I think you need to use some artistic license with how you classify a certain player with this one. So, do you want to kick us off, Fraser?
Yeah, I mean, got to be Bosa and Alden Smith. I think, and to be fair, I don't think Alden. If he was switching to a 4-3 defense, there's no way Alden Smith's playing outside backer in that formation. He's an end. He gets his hand down and just such a dominant player. I mean, God, if he just kept it together off the field. But I think he could have been a Reggie White type of numbers. I mean, his numbers early in his career, I forget exactly what they were, but they were breaking all sorts of records. He just couldn't keep it together. And obviously, Bosa's the shoeing in the other end. What a defensive line that would be.
Yeah, definitely. Who have you got, Paul?
Yeah, it has to be those two. One was unstoppable before the off-the-field issues. The other one was Defensive Player of the Year and the terror for the QBs. I've mentioned it before, Lee, when my journey started. I fell in love with Kaepernick, but watching that Harbaugh team, you fell in love with the defensive side of the ball.
Yeah.
And he was an absolute wrecking machine, Alden Smith. I mean, you take the off-the-field issues away, he could have been Hall of Fame career. Just the way he started. So looking at the context of the rules of this, I thought I'm taking him in his prime. I know a few people might say the off-the-field issues might, kind of take him away from that. But Smith and Bosa for me, for these two.
Yeah, so this is where the artistic license comes in. So this is why I went with a 3-4 and a 4-3. Because Alden Smith was technically an outside linebacker, no defensive end. And one of the guys I've got down for defensive end, to be honest, was technically a defensive tackle, but he's classed as defensive end. So I've gone with Nick Bosa and Justin Smith. And Justin Smith was the defensive tackle / defensive end. And I think that pairing, with obviously, when I did this, I was thinking more along the lines of a 3-4, with Alden Smith behind him, with Warner, Willis and Bowman. I thought that was unstoppable.
See, I've used your artistic license. Justin Smith will appear in my team, just not at the defensive end position.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's going to be an interesting one then. That's going to be an interesting one, Paul.
It's
okay.
Again,
defensive tackle, yeah.
It's not a position that there's that too much choice. I think at defensive end, which is not necessarily a good thing that we haven't always had real strength in that position. So, and it's an important position, and I think the limited number of names that are genuine options there needs to be addressed, and hopefully it has been in the last month or two. So, defensive tackles. Fraser?
Yeah, I've got Bryant Young and Justin Smith. Again, we were chatting earlier on about players that awesome players that played on really crappy teams, and Bryant Young kind of personifies that. For much of his career, was just the only thing worth watching. But again, the idea of putting Bryant Young and Justin Smith in the same lineup, that would be something to see.
How about you, Paul?
Well, I went for Justin Smith, but because my journey started a little bit later, I went with Eric Armstead instead. So obviously Smith was the engine of that early defence under Harbaugh. And Armstead's been underrated fast, and I think we've missed him since he moved away. So I thought I'd put those two together in the interior with Bosa and Smith. So I thought that would be a formidable foursome, much like ourselves on the podcast team, Lee.
Smooth.
So Armstead ahead of Buckner then? That's interesting.
That's
was
exactly what I thought.
Yeah,
That's exactly what I thought.
That's just that. I thought it'd be a little bit different, Fraser. Interest for debate.
I'd take Armstead over Buckner, not only because we obviously kept him for those 4 years longer, but I think at the time we would have all preferred to see Buckner go. I think over the longer term, I can see why we kept Armstead and let Buckner go.
I would argue that we missed Buckner in the immediate period afterwards more than we've missed Armstead. I mean, notwithstanding the crappy season that we had, but I think Buckner was a massive loss, and I don't think we've ever been able to replace him. In all those years, we've cycled guys in, but I don't think we've ever found anybody that could play up to that level. Hopefully, this year's draft will change that. You can only live in hope.
So I completely agree with that, and I've got the same player down for my 4-3 and 3-4. So Bryant Young is in both of those, and the other one in my 4-3 is DeForest Buckner.
Interesting.
Well, interesting.
Yes. So I've actually put a coach in here as well, mind. So not only have I gone players, but I've also put a DC in there. So my DC for this defense would be Vic Fangio. Caveat that. If we were playing a 3-4 defense, it would be Vic Fangio.
Fair enough. Yeah, he's gone for a coordinator as well. He's busy day, then, Lee.
Yeah,
because it gets interesting later.
Just in case I went with that, I'd have gone with Salah. I think Fangio was awesome, but I think again, I kind of question myself. He's got such a reputation as an all-time great DC, and our defense was awesome under him. But again, maybe there's a bit of recency bias and just getting excited about the off-season. And yeah, I get sucked in by all the great PR from Salah and press conferences and quotes and all that stuff. So yeah, I'm all in on Salah.
Yeah, it'd have to be Salah for me. Salah or D'Amico. But again, that's because my journey started a little bit later. And as Fraser said, I think Fangio, he's got that reputation. But I think Salah and obviously Ryan's the way they came in and they did the defence. But if we're going coordinators, I'll go for Salah as well, just to keep it interesting.
But what about you,
me?
Gareth? Yeah, what about you?
Yeah, Salah. Yeah,
Salah.
well, it would be Salah, and I think part of that is he went through that tough season when it wasn't pulling together, and he built a defense from scratch, and I think that's not just the coordinator's job, obviously. There's other people around him, but I think that's it showed what he could do, and it's kind of it. Even when D'Amico took over, it's still Salah's, and I think after D'Amico left, the imprint of Salah had long faded from the team, and I think that nothing against Ryan's, but I think he benefited very much that Salah left him with a solid defense, and he just had to keep it ticking over.
So for those people at home watching, I'm keeping an eye on the chat. If we've missed any of your favourites off, because I was going to say at the start, we've got legends, surprises, and maybe even a few snubs. There was a couple of Jimmy Ward jokes mixed in for Nadji, but Lee already stole my thunder because I was running late. But if we have missed your favourite player, if you sat at home repping his jersey and we've not mentioned him, or if there's anything you want to put in the chat, please do so, because that is the beauty of the live on a Wednesday night.
So, what we're known for? Offensiveness. Where are you going to start? Are you going to do this in reverse order as well, Lee?
Right, so
start with the centre and work outwards.
Okay. Can we leave wide receiver till last?
Yeah, of course we can.
Yeah.
Just for you.
Okay, centre. I'm going to go with Jonathan Goodwin. To me, he was the best centre that we've had in the last 25 years.
What about you, Fraser? Who's
I
your centre?
respectfully disagree, Lee. I think he's the one that immediately jumped out at me. And actually, again, I can only credit the Locked On 49ers podcast for reminding me of Jeremy Newberry. Was phenomenal. Again, didn't play that long with us, 6 seasons, but he had 2 Pro Bowls in that time. And I think none of the other guys. I think there's Goodwin's a candidate. I think there's Alex Mack had a great season for us, but again, probably, albeit he did make the Pro Bowl that year, I think he did play his best ball elsewhere. But for me, Jeremy Newberry did it over a longer period of time than Goodwin. Can't argue with Goodwin, but I would certainly put Newberry ahead of him.
Yeah, I've got nothing on that particular position. It's not one where we've really, I think, had stability or excelled. No, it's been too early to start drinking. So
when I looked at this one, as Fraser said, the locked in crew went with Jeremy Newberry. So I thought, should I steal that one? Then I thought Goodwin, and then I was thinking Alex Mack. He did have one good year, and obviously I was looking at what we want from a centre. I just wished we could have had Mack for more years in his prime. So just for the interest of the debate, I'll go for Alex Mack, just purely because I didn't really see much in Newberry, and I was leaning towards Goodwin, but I'm going to go for Alex Mack just to keep the conversation going, chaps.
Fair enough. Where to next then, Gareth?
Guards, we're working out.
Inside out. Well, I think there's probably 4 that I think are on my short list. One, I think, is an automatic. I think Upodi was phenomenal. And again, didn't play that long, but I think he had 4 Pro Bowls in total, 3 with the Niners, 1 All Pro as a Niner. And I think kind of question whether we should have held on to him. And then I think you've got 3 guys that are pretty close. You've got Laken Tomlinson, Ray Brown, and Larry Allen. I think all of them had a Pro Bowl each in their time with us. 2 of them played for 2 seasons, 1 played for 5 seasons. So probably just in terms of longevity, I thought Laken Tomlinson's story was great. He was kind of cast away by the Lions, big, high draft pick. And it was the ultimate sort of reclamation project. It was a bit wobbly in his first season with us, but just then was an absolute anchor on that in the middle of that offensive line. So I'll go with Upoti and Tomlinson.
So I changed my left guard at the start of the show when he told us about it needs to be like the performance over the 25 years while they were with the 49ers, not the prime. And because I did originally have Larry Allen in there, and then I did change it to Mike Upoti based off that. So that makes my left guard, Larry, honourable mention. Believe it or not, right guard, Alex Boone. I liked Alex Boone. He was very close. I liked the fact that he was on our practice team for 4 years running and never made the roster. And then that final year, he made the roster and he kept that space. He kept that place. And then obviously he became a constant starter for us. And then we eventually lost him to free agency to the Vikings. But still, my right guard, my right guard, I'm actually going to go with Dominic Pooney. Because what I saw from him last season, he was just outstanding. I can't wait to see him this season.
Yeah, I think when Brad Graham started banging the drum this time last year, and we were thinking, can he really be this good? Because Brad's the one I got to for the offensive line. But similar to Fraser, I went with Lopati, and then I was torn between Tomlinson and the Punisher, and I thought Lee's definitely going to go for the Punisher. So I thought that allows me to do the same. So yeah, I'm going with Lopati, and I'm going with Dominic Puny as my 2 guards.
I think there's going to be some fairly strong agreement on that. I think on the polls, have we done guard yet?
No, guards tomorrow, so it'll be interesting to see when people come on the road.
Because I do think that is a position where there have been a couple of standout people, and I don't think the short list for that will be very short. In fact, a very short list. Tackles. Are we going to split left and right, or just
I've just actually when it comes to tackle, I think my 2 have played either end. And both know
I bet you it's the same 2 as mine.
I think there's back there's not even going to be anything close. But interestingly, I was looking at the poll there because I couldn't quite work out why it wasn't just automatic. But somebody on the Facebook polls actually gone with Derek Dees over Williams. I thought, okay, I was not sure I would agree with that, but listen, that's why we do these things. Anyway, a bit of debate. But yeah, so Staley and Williams would be my two. I don't imagine there'll be much debate around that.
No, so Staley and Williams are my two as well. Now, based off your rules, Fraser, Staley only played at right tackle for one season, and I would have him above. I'd have Trent Williams above him at left tackle. And if I was forced to go with someone else other than Staley, because he only played right tackle one season, I think it would be Anthony Davis. Even though he was a good player, but he had his issues. I mean, he quit on us twice. He quit, came back, because he did retire and then unretire, and then eventually went. But he was a good player. He just seemed to have his demons, a little bit like Alden Smith, but not to that extent. There's just something holding him back. But he was a really good player. And we got him in the same draft as your party as well.
I've totally cheated on this one. I'm going for friend of the show, Joe Staley. That meeting him in London, talking football with him, and then going back, doing this exercise and watching the game tape. Staley just got better and better. And Trent Williams, I mean, I have seen a couple of people, Fraser, opt for Trent Brown at right tackle. So I was going to try and do a cheeky little Trent isn't the only, but I've got to go with them too. And I don't care. They can find it out, whichever one wants to play right or left. But for me, it has to be them too.
That is the only question. If those two guys have been on the team at the same time, who would you stick on the left side?
I'd go Joe Staley just because I met him in London and I haven't met Trent Williams yet. But Gareth, the answer might change given when Trent Williams comes across. Oh, sorry, I shouldn't be saying that. Just
yeah, people get overexcited at that. Stable for you two guys as well.
Yeah.
Wow. Consensus agreement. So where should we go after tackle? Shall we go tight end? You want to save wide receivers till the last? Is there going to be a list of, I think possibly two at tight end, and that might be being generous. Fraser,
it could easily have been three, mind.
To be fair, on the Facebook poll, there was only two, wasn't there, Fraser? Because I looked at the votes this afternoon on my lunch break, and there was two tight ends. One had about 94% of the vote. One had about 6% of the vote. So I thought, oh, that's interesting. I was expecting this to be unanimous 100%, but it was interesting to see a couple of people go for not George at 85, but there was another 85 that was getting some love.
How close was number 3?
Oh, let me get it in front of me here. I don't think there was a number 3. I think it was only for two players.
Right. Interesting.
Yeah, I think George had about 90% of the vote.
No, there was one vote for Greg Clark. And actually, I mean, I think Greg Clark and Eric Johnson were underrated players. I think Greg Clark, it wasn't until I was going back, of course, he committed suicide a couple of years ago and they found out CTE. And, that's just a reminder of what a different game football was and why some of these ridiculous rules that have been brought in nowadays, you put it in that context and you can understand why. But the other thing that jumped out at me, and again, you guys will know this as well as anyone, is just you look at the receiving stats that George Kittle has, third all time, and actually the gap between him and T.O. is number 2 on that list. The gap, if you look at it on a per game basis, George is not that far behind, and he plays tight end. It's just I think he would make the team at either of those two positions. But I think sometimes we all love George and what he brings to the team, but you put him in that historical context, and you think we've got to enjoy this because he is. He obviously got his another big contract that's going to be around for years to come. But we need to enjoy him because this is a special player we've got.
Yeah, best tight end, best blocking tight end in football, and we all fell in love. I mean, we go back to that famous night in Edinburgh against the Saints and Kittle fighting those defenders off him. And as Fraser said there, he's got better and better. If you haven't watched his interview with Bussin with the boys, It's well worth going to watch. That dropped yesterday, I believe, and George is on there talking about being healthy, talking about the only good thing about the Niners being terrible last year was they all got January off, and the fact that they've all came back refreshed, and he's looking hungry, he's looking lean, and we all love a Club 85, especially on this side of the pond. So I think my answer was quite obvious where I was going on this one, Fraser. So
yeah, and you won't be shocked that I picked George Kittle either. My number two, though, my number two, I was really stuck with that one. I eventually did side with Vernon Davis. However, it was very close between him and Delaney Walker, because when when Walker left, we let Walker go in free agency and we kept Davis. I think that was one of the biggest mistakes we made. I thought at the time Walker was by far our best tight end. And Davis, I think this was post the Cam Chancellor hit on Davis, and he just went downhill after that. He was all Jamba Juice. He was about the brand, about the image, and I definitely think we got rid of the wrong tight end there.
I think two things on that. I think one is, and I think Eric Crocker mentioned it on the podcast, that if you were reviewing this on the whole of Delaney Walker's career and what he did at the Titans, you definitely put him up there.
Yeah.
But also in terms of Davis, he had again another one of these players that played on some honking teams. I mean, he was there. He's Alex Smith, and okay, we know how that one eventually ended. But yeah, I think Davis struggled again because he came in with such a reputation, and everything was going to be built around him. I don't think the tight end position had kind of evolved in the way that it has now. But again, his stats, are comfortably above anybody else from that era, certainly. So
yeah,
I went with Davis second purely because of obviously my journey began with Kaepernick, that Super Bowl run. And when preparing for this and going back and watching some of the catches, some of the touchdowns, and you're right, Lee, it didn't end great, but I thought for the context of, prime Davis with a prime Kittle, that two tight end set that we've all been crying out for, I just thought that would be a pretty unstoppable duo, especially in today's game.
Yeah.
Ross Dwelly just for wiping out Aaron Donald.
Funnily enough, yeah. He was at the back of my mind as well.
And
I like it, Gareth. I like it.
It wasn't legendary, but when I was getting back into it, that was
that hit was
hit.
Legendary.
But another guy, not really a suitable candidate, but Garrett Selleck. Remember Selleck time?
Yeah.
That was sort of when I was early getting back into it, and he was that kind of that cult hero, not a huge contributor, but just seemed massively popular. I think he must have mentored a young George Kittle, I think, for a season or two.
I'm going to make you all haters now. I narrowly missed getting my photo taken with Garrett Selleck, and that's because I was busy interviewing Keena Turner at the time.
Yeah, humble brag. I mean, could you imagine, Gareth? Could you imagine Discord with him playing at tight ends? We've had some cult heroes in the Discord days, but I could just imagine Selleck time on Discord after dark. It just has a good ring to it. But no, Lee, that video popped back up on my YouTube feed with you interviewing Keena Turner, or when you were doing the view around. So, to be fair, it wasn't a bad opportunity to miss, was it? Interviewing Keena Turner. Similar to me in London, I missed Delaney Walker, Gareth, when Joe Staley was there because I didn't realise he'd come in. I was too busy fanboying over Joe Staley, and then I think Neil Graham said to me, "Yeah, Delaney Walker's been and gone." I was like, "Has he? Oh well, fair enough."
So on the final stretch, should we go from one shoe-in to another? I think fullback.
Yeah.
I mean, I liked Fred Beasley and I liked Miller as well. Didn't like his off the field nonsense, but there's only one offensive weapon.
Yeah, definitely. I don't think we even need to name him, do we?
Nope.
Everyone knows. Right. Are we up to running back now?
Yeah, we've got running back. Let's do running back, quarterback, and save wide receivers for last. Because we are going to pick multiple. Are we just picking one running back? I kind of feel we should pick two, so long as they're kind of a different type of back, the kind of backs we could imagine.
Yes, Gareth, because I've got two on my list.
That makes it too easy. Come on, you got to nail your colours to the mast here, guys.
Okay,
what
well,
saying.
I'm going to.
You've got-
Yeah,
you've got to
I've
pick
only
one.
picked one. Bloody cheater. Cheater.
Yeah,
I can't
Never
believe
catch
this.
you doing that, way.
Never catch me doing that. Go on then, I'll go first. Has to be Frank Gore.
Cool.
It's just got to be.
Why does it have to be Lee? Come on, you have to sell it to the people at home.
Why? Because he is the 49ers franchise. That's why. Frank Gore is the 49ers franchise. Doesn't matter how shy he is in public, when he was on that field, he was an absolute legend. He came into the league and nobody thought he would actually play down in the NFL because of the 2 serious knee injuries he had coming out of Miami. And he proved everybody wrong. The longevity of him. He kept his nose clean. He's 3rd on the all-time rushing list. He is first ballot Hall of Famer in my eyes. And he did it. He did the vast majority of it with the 49ers.
Now, the purposes of this exercise was to stimulate debate. So I'm gonna be the awkward one, and I love Gore. You know, there's no Gore hate here, but I went with the kind of the head over the heart. So I was looking at some of the stats here, and okay, so Gore had 148 starts, and Christians had 31, so much smaller sample size. You know, essentially only really a season and a half as a Niner. But in that time, Christians had the higher yards per game, higher yards per attempt, higher touchdown rate, higher receiving yards per game, higher yards per reception, a higher catch percentage, and a lower fumble rate. You know, so that's only a selection of stats, and you know, you can make stats say whatever you want. But as I went through them, I was just like that's every single of those key stat points where he's already kind of outperforming, and in some of those areas quite significantly outperforming Gore. So yeah, hey, listen, there's no exact science, but I'm going to be putting the flag in the ground for CMC.
How about you, Paul?
Well, I mean, I did cheat and went for 2, but obviously, in the interest of the contest, I was thinking the inconvenient truth. As you said, Gore had the longevity, the model of toughness. He was awesome in London. He's my profile picture on all my social medias. However, Lee, when we were preparing to go to San Francisco, you told me to pick my jersey choice very carefully because of the photographs, because of the memories. So, Fraser, I love CMC. I wore the CMC when we went to Levi's. I've got a figure in the glass stand over there. He scored the first live 49ers touchdown that I saw. So for that reason, and that reason alone, my flag is going with CMC, number 23. So that's where I went. But Frank Gore was in there if we were allowed to. But obviously you've said we're not, so I'll go with CMC.
Come on, Gareth. Help us out here, buddy.
Well, I can either tie it or swing it, and I'm going to have to go for CMC as well.
Yeah, you look like a swinger, mate.
Yeah, well, the what has swung it for me is the dual threat, is the fact that he is like having 2 players in that he is such a good receiver as well as being such a good runner, and that's not to take anything away from Frank, but he was that head down Frank the Tank. And you got what you needed from a running back, and I think Christian's just got that extra dimension to his game. Maybe it's more the way the NFL has gone. But of course, it reminds me back of Roger Craig in the day, a guy who was just as good at playing receiver as he was running back. And I think it's like having 2 guys on your side. So it's got to be CMC.
I think as well, Lee, remember the knock on Shanahan was you could take any running back, plug it into his system, and he would look good. And when we traded for CMC, we all knew he was good, but I don't think we foresaw him being this good and elevating that offense to how good it was. When I was preparing, Tommy, going back and watching the Ravens Super Bowl, why didn't we give it to Gore? If we'd maybe given it to Gore and not thrown 3 fates to Crabtree, that might have been a different conversation. But yeah, Tommy, there's no hate for Frank on this show, but in the interest of playing fair, we all had to go for 1 each. So you're outvotedly 3-1. Be interesting to see
it is what it
make
is.
of that.
It is what it is.
So what have we got left? Quarterback next.
Quarterback.
Then wide receivers. Quarterback. Interesting choice.
Yeah, I was quite interested in the poll with this one. I thought it would be more kind of an even split. I would definitely go with Brock. I think again, you look at the numbers across kind of a bunch of different categories, and I think Brock's first or second in every one of those categories. The other one that I think you could look at is Cap, and he's last or second last, apart from the only category where he led was the lowest interception rate, but he threw the fewest balls by quite some margin as well. So you're going to throw a lot less interceptions if you're not throwing the ball. So I think we've already seen what Brock can do, and I don't think we've seen peak Brock. Yeah, I don't think we're going to see any kind of second contract slump. I think we saw the floor of Brock last season when he had no weapons, and I think it's Brock all the way for me.
This was like choosing between your kids for me, and I knew when I was prepared for this one. I was like, "Oh my god!"
Hang on, Paul. Do you just want to go and turn that picture around in the background before you give us your answer?
To be fair, I'm going with number 7. He electrified the league in 2012. He took us to the Super Bowl. He redefined the position with his arms and legs. The prime Cap gets a nod for me at the moment. Looking at I'm a fan of Purdy, but until kind of I see a little bit more. And then for the interest of the conversation, like Fraser said, I wondered whether it was going to be kind of the recency bias and everyone was going to go with 13. But when I've gone back and watched the game tape, Eric Crocker was also on the same page as me. He was showing the love for number 7. So it has to be Kaepernick for me. Obviously, I've got a Kaepernick shelf up there. I've got the picture. Number 7 was my first jersey. But yeah, I did say to Tracy in the car, this is like picking between the two kids. Which one do I like the best? So I'll let you decide, Lee, which one's Kaepernick and which one's Purdy, and you can text them that later.
so I've got to say, those first 2 seasons with Cap were absolutely electric. It was so fun to watch the 49ers play football. And the feeling it gave you is, we're going to win the Super Bowl every year for the next 15 years. And then season 3 turned up, and you could start to see he's struggling a bit here. What is it he's struggling with? And defense had realised, flush him out a particular way, and he's stuck. He doesn't know what to do. And you saw the limitations then. So those first 2 years, when people were getting used to him as a player, as a mobile quarterback, he did put up some really good numbers. But once he was found out, he was found out. Whereas Brock, I think, I completely agree with Fraser. I don't think we've seen the best of Brock yet. I think he's going to continue to improve. I think he's got this Brady-esque type learning curve. He started really well, and I think he'll just continue to get better because the game is already slowing down for him. He can read the game really quick, which is one of the reasons why Shanahan likes him. And everything I've seen of Brock so far, and again, I mean, let's go back to the season just before he actually started, the pre-season. I turned around and said, I believe Brock's going to throw the game-winning touchdown in the Super Bowl that season. And if it had not been for that injury against the Eagles, I think he probably would have. And he's just different. We'll say what Najee says. Use your eye test. Use the eye test. He's just different gravy. And I can't wait to see him progress. Hopefully he has no major injuries, and we really get to see what he can become. And Purdy's the number 1 for me.
I mean, when you said about the eye test, Lee, there, when I went back, everyone remembers that game for Kaepernick against the Packers, but it wasn't just on the ground. You go and look at some of those throws, some of the touchdowns, and then against Seattle, yes, we might not have won the game, but Kaepernick did go into Seattle against the Legion of Boom, and he kind of took it to them. So, as Hughes, he put there, Cap 2012, 2013 was unreal. It's just a shame the way it ended. But yeah, I want to see Purdy prove me wrong. So I thought, because we know he watches the show, I went with Kaepernick over Purdy.
I've got to swing it in Purdy's favour here. I think we haven't seen the best of him. I think what we have seen is phenomenal, and I also think it's nothing against a quarterback like Cap, but sometimes boring is what shows up on a really, really good quarterback. Because they just get the ball out on time, particularly in Shanahan's offense. It was what, dare I say it was what Jimmy G did well when he was looking his best.
Yeah.
And it was just, he got Shanahan's offense moving, and it was just 7 yards. I'll take 5 yards. I'll take 9 yards, and then bang, we're down the field and we've scored. And it's not going to make on anyone's highlight reel. Everyone's going to say it's the system, but it's a skill. A quarterback who can deliver that. Brock does that, and he also does the off-scripted stuff, and he also does the evasion, that ability to sense pressure, and just that scamper, his running ability hasn't got the highlight reels of Cap, but I think there's not that much between it. It's just Brock is more happy to sit and try and find the pass, and scampering is his last resort. Can't wait for a new season of Brock, fully healthy receivers, hopefully, maybe a good offensive line, and let's see what the boy can do now he's been paid, because he now has to live up to the money he's earning.
Well, you mentioned Jimmy there, Gareth. I was going to say Fraser. I was shocked Neil Watson didn't add Jimmy as one of the selections on the poll, but it was nice to see Jimmy get some love from Brian Peacock. So you talk about stats, Gareth. Peacock was saying if you look at Jimmy G's comeback in the fourth quarter, if you looked at that stat alone, it deserved to be in the conversation. And I think when you go back through your Niners history, what's been good about this, Fraser, is you kind of remind yourself of some good moments. Yeah, there's all the bad moments. We haven't won the Super Bowls. But Jimmy, for me, was in the conversation, Lee, because obviously at the time, that Super Bowl run, I think he was what we needed. But as you all three have said there, I'm excited to see what Purdy can do, because he is the best quarterback for Kyle Shanahan. But that will be for another show, for another day.
I'm not going to pour salt in your wounds, Paul, but actually my number 2 wasn't Cap. I would put Garcia there. You know, if we go back to that early 2000 era, which I guess you guys may remember less, but you know, he coming on the back. Anybody that's going to come in on the back of Montana, followed by Young, and who comes in third there, has got such a difficult situation to inherit there. But he played some amazing football at that point. You could talk about system quarterbacks. He didn't live up to that sort of level when he went on from the Niners. I think we made a huge mistake by moving on from him. But I think honourable mention to Jeff Garcia.
To be fair, Fraser, I escaped that bullet because my fandom started with Kaepernick. So I knew Garcia would be in the conversation, but I was trying to kind of keep it with my own kind of journey. So the players, so you guys have had the last 25 years. I've had since like 2012. But that also hamstrung me for the wide receivers, because using my own rules means I had to rule out a certain 81. But I must chuckle when I saw someone had added the legendary Jerry Rice, and I was thinking, how can Jerry Rice be in this conversation? And he had one season in 2000. So Simon Friskney, you put number 80 in the conversation, but to be fairly, 80 didn't make my cut for the last 24 years. I don't know whether he made any of your cuts for wide receiver.
So thank you, Paul. Yes, he did make mine. This is before I knew about the rules. So my wide receivers were Jerry Rice, Terrell Owens, and Deebo Samuel. That was my 3. Now that I know that it's based on the performance over the last 25 years, I'm struggling at that third slot, because it could be one of 3 players, and Brandon Ayuk has to be in the conversation. Pains me to say it, but Michael Crabtree has to be in that conversation. And to be honest, the guy I would go, if I had to get rid of Jerry because of that only one season, he didn't have the yards, he was at the back end of his career, I may actually plump for Anquan Bolden, because he was always a safe pair of hands. He was a really good player. You could rely on him, and he had that build of Deebo. And I liked him. I think he was an undervalued, underrated player when he played for us.
So just before you answer, Tommy has put his 4 at quarterback, but Montana and Young, it's the last 25 years, Tommy. So that's what we're doing at the moment. I'll jump in now. I've got the same 3 as you, Lee. Bolden was a firm favourite of mine. He was tough as nails. Ayuk for the route running, and Deebo for that 2021 season where he put the team on the back. But if I was going to cheat, I was trying to think, how could I get Tio in there? I didn't watch him live at the time, but I've seen all the
He
footage.
played a good 3-4 seasons. I think it was 2004.
I meant my own rules, because I'd only watched the
Right,
team
fair
from
enough.
2012,
Yeah, yeah.
but I don't want to do a Gowland and just start making it up.
No,
So
I mean,
my three are Bolden, Ayuk, and Samuel. They're the three I've got. So Gareth or Fraser now to add theirs.
On Debo is one that I struggle with because it's that great season and a handful of great plays, and then not really living up to it in the last couple of seasons, and whether I think objectively anyone could say I'm wrong, but I'd take Jennings over Debo. I would, and it's not just the recency bias. I think as the out and out receiver, Jennings has never put a foot wrong. He's had that one great season, but I just think that's because he's been in the shadow of others, and I'm looking forward to seeing him this coming season because I'm at the moment I'm quite happy going with Purcell and Jennings into the season. So it doesn't quite seem right on a whole 25 years, but I would take him over Debo. I would.
Yeah, I really hope we do one more bit of business this off season that's locking him up to a deal, because I think if we can get him for another couple of years and build that continuity and that sort of trio that we've got to build the offense around, I think we've got some real exciting time ahead. I was kind of similar in terms of kind of getting the two quite quickly and then the same three that Lee struggled with. So Tito, I came joy of this exercise. You kind of go back and look at old YouTube clips. I sat with a 9-year-old last night. We showed him clips of Tito play, and it was just so much fun. Hated the fact that he then ended up in the with the Cowboys, but just that 2 touchdown performance in Texas Stadium where he dances on the star, and it was this Sharpie in his sock and all that sort of stuff. I mean, just absolute popcorn, and it was just he was epic and so comfortably number one receiver there. Debo, I think, on the basis that if you add in his rushing yardage, then it takes him to a different level. In terms of, I think there's actually 4 receivers there that are all kind of in a similar. But I think because of the dynamism that he's got, and also he just took over games at times. They're just give me the damn ball, Kyle. Game down in Dallas. And he didn't do it all the time, but when he did, he was genuinely unstoppable. And for my third one, again, probably my heart would have gone with Bolden, but that's probably because of what he did over the course of his career. I think he was a great player for us, but I think he probably played, if we're honest about it, his better ball with other teams.
The Cardinals.
And I mean, Crabtree, I always disliked him because I was at the draft the year we drafted him, and I was so hyped. I mean, the Raiders had picked a couple of picks before us, and they took Hayward Bay, and the place was going crazy. The Raiders fans were nuts because they hadn't taken Crabtree because he was like a consensus number one receiver, and I just don't think he ever lived up to it, And then obviously the Super Bowl loss and all the nonsense with Sherman and stuff. But actually, I think Ayuk, again, if you look at the numbers, Ayuk's already done the damage. What he can do coming back off the injury remains to be seen. But yeah, I'd go with Owens, Ayuk, and Debo.
When I was looking, a name that kept cropping up, but I decided to rule out Brandon Lloyd. I thought was decent, and I saw a few people use Randy Moss purely because of his career. But I thought the 1 year he was at the Niners, I couldn't go with it. Great. And I know someone in the chat's put that Debo one season wonder, but I think the three of Bolden, Debo, and Ayuk at their prime on this team would have been good. But it has been an interesting conversation, Lee. As we said at the start, there's been some snubs, there's been some legends, there's been some surprises.
I've got 3 others, mind. I've got 3 others. So I've got offensive coordinator, Kyle Shanahan, because technically he is the offensive coordinator.
Okay.
Not anymore.
Well, no, not anymore. He's not.
He sacked himself after last season.
Yeah, I don't blame him. Head coach, Jim Harbaugh, and GM. This one I was really struggling with. It's between 2. No. I actually went with Scott McCloughan because I thought Scott McCloughan was a cracking GM. I thought he brought in some really talented players.
I
struggled because John Lynch is he's getting there.
I thought when you said 3 more, it was going to be punter, kicker, and
Players.
long snapper.
No.
Yeah, I did think he was going to go for special
Actually,
teams
you know
because
what?
he does
I
like
hadn't-
to talk about that, you know.
I've got
But
other special teams here as well.
Yeah, well,
We're
kicker,
pushing the hour mark.
kicker's
Yeah.
worth conversation for sure.
yeah, don't be too hasty, Gowland. I thought you were going to go special teams, then you went down a different rabbit hole, and I thought, I'm not prepared for that bit.
Okay, then let's go special teams.
So go on, Fraser. We'll let you kick this off. See, it's your baby, the polls and everything.
So, kicker, got to be Robbie Gould. But interestingly, when you look at the numbers, there's not a whole lot in it. Because actually, when I thought about this before, I looked at the depth. That Phil Dawson was a guy that I just was phenomenal, and I kind of thought, I wonder about. My memory would tell me that Phil Dawson had better numbers than Gould, but no, Gould's like 87.5%. Field goal rate. Joe Nedney's just behind him as well. David Akers, again, probably played better football with other teams, but was certainly an upgrade when we got him. And interestingly, Jake Moody, I'm going to put him on the poll when it comes to it, because it's a divisive character. If everybody
You're going to get us cancelled. You're going to get us cancelled.
Absolutely. But here's the thing. I'm on the Moody bandwagon, and I think he's going to come back from injury this year. Back to the
I think he will as well.
If you look
I
at the
agree.
numbers up until injury last year, his field goal percentage overall was 85%. So you're not a kick off the teeth of any of those kind of all-time greats that we're talking about. And I think that injury. We know now what's coming out in some of the sort of Bay Area press. He was telling them the whole the second half of the season he's like just not right physically. But I think as a kicker, that's got to help hit you mentally as well. So, but anyway, Robbie Gould for me.
Yeah,
So you
Robbie
do
Gould for me too.
you do realise, Fraser, that the last time we recorded a show and we were talking about contracts and players and all the rest of it, news broke just after. So what you've just done now is every Niners fan that wants Jake Moody to be cut, you've just mentioned his name, and we're going to end record. And what's going to happen, Lee, is there's going to be some breaking news.
Jake Moody cut.
To be fair, Fraser, you did raise a good point, but when the game's on the line, it has to be Mr. Automatic. It had to be Robbie Gould. So I went with Robbie for kicker.
Yeah.
I went for Andy Lee at punter. Absolute cannon of a
That's
leg.
who I got, Andy Lee.
Multiple All-Pros. And for the returner, I went for Ted Ginn Jr.
Yeah,
just because of the
that's who I've got as
speed,
returner
field
as well.
position, and the threat. We've not had a threat to score a returner, it seems like, forever. So there were the special teams picks that I had, chaps.
No Kyle Williams for your returner. Come on. Like best punters. Oh no, wait a second. No. Okay. Less said about Kyle Williams.
You're definitely trying to get us cancelled on your first appearance. I'm telling
I'm
you.
not going
That's
to be
what I
invited
thought
back for that one. And first of all, I'm bigging up Jake Moody, and now I'm talking about Kyle Williams. Definitely will get back. And actually, given that I do have my Claymore stuff there, I need to give a shout out to Maurice Hicks, who was a kick returner for us for about 3 seasons, and he was running back with the Claymores for a season. So shout out to my old Claymores guys.
So
I think he's something ridiculous. He's about like third in our kick return leaderboard all time, which it surprised me. He's only with us 3 years, but put up some decent numbers.
So there you have it, faithful. That is the greatest 49ers team from 2000 to 2024. Agree, disagree, drop your picks in the comments. Tell us who we've missed. Is there anything else, chaps? Is there any other rabbit holes for us to disappear into? Anything else to talk about?
Yeah, so one thing to talk about, I don't know if anybody's noticed, but I'm wearing a hat. And this is a hat that's been made by our friends across the pond. We are going to have a special show with them on so they can go through some of the merchandise that they are creating for us. If you stay tuned, we're going to sort out getting all that set up. And the guys will come on and introduce themselves. They're known to quite a few of us in the group. I've met them all, so I know them all personally, and they all are based stateside. And they've got some really good things in the fire, some really good irons in the fire. So stay tuned. So that show should be in the next couple of weeks.
I was going to say, you said stay tuned. I thought you meant either backstage ready to come on. You've missed a trick. John Chapman has been rocking that hat on his shows. So It's good that you have had that on. For the first time in forever, we took a break. And I think John's been repping that hat. And because there hasn't been much to talk about, it has been good to do a show. So yeah, as Lee said, if
Yeah.
you want more information, do stay tuned because it is exciting and it looks pretty good, Lee. I know we all love the residency over on this side of the pond,
Yeah.
but to have our
It
colours,
is. So it's got the mesh back, which is perfect in this weather because I am sweating my tits off Saturday. So yeah, it's a nice hat.
So will we be back next week before I go any further? Because I know we took a month off. Believe it or not, Gareth, there wasn't much to talk about, but it has been nice. Apologies that I was late. I will promise to be on time next week. What I would like to say is everybody who has joined us, we do appreciate it. Please do drop a like, a subscribe, a comment, and all that good stuff. It does help with the YouTube algorithm. I have had a blast. Fraser, we do appreciate you joining us. Thank you for all the work you're doing with the polls. I believe they're going to continue for a few more days. Is that right, buddy, before we go?
Take us a bit closer to training camp at least. And you guys can take part now. You're
Yeah, that's right.
cat's out the bag.
Yeah, so we were under orders, Fraser. We always do, as El Presidente says. So he told us not to vote. I'll be honest, I found that hard. And when I was doing the screenshot for David, I think I accidentally voted in a couple, so I had to go back and take those votes off. But I think that is all that we have for today. As I said, keep on those notifications. Do hit that like button. And as I've been saying all off season, trust the process, faithful, and go Niners.
Go Niners.
Bang, bang, Niner gang.
We love the San Francisco 49ers deep in our heart. Like Joe Montana in the corner, Deke Clark. Garrison Hurst, stiff farm going.